congratulations to everyone on the film. And Simon, I'll start with a question for you, which is just to take us through a little bit the origins of the project and how you came to make the film, and a little bit about your collaboration with the screenwriter who I know you've worked with previously.
It was very simple. I was lucky enough to read the books, both the first diary that Colin Clark wrote called The Prince, the Showgirl and Me, and then 5 years later he subsequently wrote My Week with Marylin, which was the hidden week during the making of The Prince and the Showgirl. And I can only describe it as falling in love. I just loved the material. I loved the unique insight he had into both the making of the film and, of course, into Marylin herself. And to my amazement, as someone who's never made a film, I was able to get the rights to the books, and with a great screenwriter from the BBC called Adrian Hodges, we developed it. And BBC Films and the Weinstein Company were the dream partners as producers. And then, the big news, Michelle wanted to play Marylin. So I've been very, very lucky all the way through.
Well, Michelle, it's such a remarkable performance, and I think certainly when we saw the film, we just thought, you know, what a risk to take on playing, you know, this icon who's probably been represented, you know, dozens, if not 100 times in movies and TV shows, usually by bad impersonators. Can you take us through a little bit your discovery of Marylin, how you approached the character, and who you sort of discovered Marylin to be in the process?
Boy, let's see. Well, first, like you said, because the sort of previous representations of her were more of that ilk, it felt like maybe there was room. That was kind of the first thing that made me think, oh, maybe I can explore this. And Simon, and it was a decision made in the safety of my own home, and I didn't really consider sort of larger ramifications of it. And it was a very, very slow process. It all started at home. It all started with watching movies, listening to interviews, poring over books, and it started, it was just something that I put on in my living room, sort of try and mimic a walk, or figure out how exactly it is that she's holding her mouth. The first sort of big discovery that I stumbled on was that Marilyn Monroe was a character that she played, and that the image that you're most familiar with, there was a person underneath there, and that was the first big discovery, that that was carefully honed, but it was artifice, and it was honed to where you couldn't tell that it was artifice. It felt so real, but it was something that she'd studied and perfected and crafted. So once I discovered that was a layer, and finding out what that layer was, and then getting underneath it. So it was a long and ungainly process.
I mean, in a way, it seems it's almost like a multiple role, because you're playing someone who's playing a role, Did you think of it in those terms, almost like you were playing 3 characters instead of 1?
I don't know if we ever talked about it like that. Did we, Simon?
I think so, because we're talking about the private Marylin, the public Marylin, and then the Marylin in The Prince and the Showgirl. So there are 3 Marylyns.
Yeah, I think we talked. In some way, it's not. When you think of them separately, you want to think of them together because they need to adhere. So I know that there are sort of 3 different aspects, but I think maybe it's a little. I don't know how much it helps me to think of them as 3 sort of separate people, because they are, of course, connected.
And can you talk a little bit about your scenes with Kenneth Branagh in the film, and how you guys developed the relationship of Monroe and Olivier, and was there any effort to mirror, on the set of this movie, the relationship that they had on the set of The Prince and the Showgirl? Did you guys keep a distance from each other? What was that relationship like?
I think that the only distance that we might have kept was because we were both so absorbed in our process. We sat next to each other in the hair and makeup chair, and it was like Command Central number 1 and Command Central number 2. We both were kind of married to our computers, headphones in our ears, constantly watching, listening, absorbing, and then going out and doing. So the only kind of separation occurred as a part of trying to capture somebody who was, and that requires a certain amount of technical attention.
And Eddie, can you tell us a little bit about how you became involved with the project, and a little bit about Simon as a director of actors?
Well, I came across the project. I was actually in New York doing a play, and I was sent the script. I had studied art history at university, so I knew a bit about Kenneth Clark, who was Colin Clark's dad. So I heard about that sort of back, and so that kind of spiked my curiosity, I suppose. And then read the script and realised I had a weird amount in common with this guy, and got really engaged with it. And then so I just auditioned for Simon, and then Michelle was filming in Toronto, and went up there, and we had a screen test there, and then from then on it was the most wonderful ride, really. And Simon I had known through socially through theatre in London, and it was the most wonderful experience. And I think I speak for Michelle here as well, that on this film, as you see, there is the most staggering group of British actors who are sort of idols of mine, and so certainly for me, every day it was like you were going to work and getting to share a scene with one of the great knights of the realm, or Dame Judi Dench. And the reason so many extraordinary actors were working on this film was because they love working for Simon, and he has a wonderful facility with actors. So it was this whole idea that plays in the film of theatre and film intermingling. I think kind of worked quite well in that sense.
Questions.